Kiren Rijiju. He became a household name with his tussle against the judiciary, often making headlines. But did that work against him? An order from President Murmu has cut short Kiren Rijiju's tenure as Law Minister. After 22 fiery months at the Ministry of Law and Justice, he has now been charged with Ministry of Earth Sciences. He has been replaced by former MoS Finance Arjun Ram Meghwal. He has been picked as an MoS with independent charge. But a look back at Rijiju's 22-month tenure reveals flashpoints that caused public fire and fury. The first point of friction was the collegium system of appointing judges. The Supreme Court held public hearings questioning the government for not approving names recommended by the collegium. Rijiju said here, and I quote, "Never say that the government is sitting on the files, then don't send the files to the government. You appoint yourself, you run the show then." He further questioned the judges, claiming that judges are appointed once, they don't have to face elections, judges can't even be scrutinized by the public. The Supreme Court was firm in its response in the public hearing. The Supreme Court took exception to these comments. It reminded the centre that collegium was the law of the land and finally warned that it won't be shy of taking action. Flashpoint number 2. Now, while the Supreme Court was conducting these very public hearings on judicial appointments, Rijiju wrote to the CJI. In that letter, Rijiju sought for government presence on the Search-cum-Evaluation Committee. Now, this was quite brazen, given as how back in 2015, the Supreme Court had already struck down the NJAC Act. Flashpoint number 3. In November of 2021, the collegium had recommended that Saurabh Kirpal, an openly gay advocate, be elevated to a High Court judge. Now, a year later, the centre sent the file back with objections from RAW. One objection that had been raised was that he's open about his sexual orientation. Now, the Supreme Court came down firmly on this. It released a resolution revealing the RAW objection and went on to reiterate its recommendation. The very next day, Kiren Rijiju called for a press conference and slammed the Supreme Court for revealing the objections that had been raised by RAW. Flashpoint number 4. Now, Rijiju also hit out at retired judges making comments against the government. In one such comment, he said, and I quote, "Even after retiring, a judge should maintain the sanctity. Some retired judges maybe unknowingly participate in some programs that are sponsored by anti-government forums." And flashpoint number 5, another low point in the centre-Supreme Court relations was comments made by Rijiju advising the Supreme Court on what cases should be heard. He said, and I quote here again, "If the Supreme Court of India starts hearing bail applications, if the Supreme Court of India starts hearing frivolous PILs, it will definitely cause a lot of extra burden." Soon enough, in open court, the CJI remarked that no case is too small for the Supreme Court and no case is too big. If we do not act in matters of personal liberty and grant relief, then what are we doing here? Now, interestingly, along with Rijiju, MoS for Law, that's SP Baghel, has also been shipped out of the Law Ministry. He will now take charge as MoS for the Health Ministry, a complete change in the composition of leadership at the Law Ministry. Arjun Ram Meghwal now has taken charge of the Law Ministry. Kiren Rijiju has extended his wishes, but given the recent friction with the courts, Meghwal will have to call on all his experience from public administration to politics to avoid the fate of his two immediate predecessors.